Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to the A4ID annual conference and to our first set of panel sessions. We're really grateful that you could be here. I'm sure other people will be coming in soon. I have the great honour of welcoming you all to our panel on international partnerships for sustainable change. We're really excited to have all of these panelists with us to give us their perspectives on working on pro bono in different international contexts, and particularly working in partnerships between different international institutions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the chair for this panel, Justice Zainab Alami. Justice Alami is a judge of the High Court of the Gambia, based in Banjul. She was called to the Bar of England and Wales, the Inner Temple and the Gambia Bar in 2000. I've been really lucky to work with Justice Alami on the work that A4ID has supported between judiciaries in the Gambia and also her participation in the Standing International Forum of Commercial Courts. So we're really grateful to have her with us today, and I'm going to pass over so she can introduce you to the rest of this fabulous panel.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody that has been able to join us. I am thrilled to be here today to welcome the fellow panelists and members of the audience. Welcome to the panel discussion on international partnerships for sustainable change. As you're all aware, this is part of the inaugural A4ID annual conference, aimed at exploring current trends in the work of the rule of law, international development, and pro bono work, with a focus on ideas emerging in this area to address the challenges brought on by the current pandemic. Our panel is made up of a diverse group of highly skilled individuals in their area of expertise, who will, through our discussions, focus on how international partnerships can ensure the sustainability of their shared work and consider how partnership goals have evolved during the pandemic and what the key opportunities are for partnership working post-pandemic. We have an hour, 30 minutes, I believe, together. All our conversations have to be short. We will first of all have panel discussions, and then we will have an opportunity for questions and answers from the audience. We encourage you to send in your questions so that we can have a lively discussion. In order to contribute, we ask that you put your questions as brief as you can, and please type your questions on the Q&A feature on the Zoom webinar. Without further ado, I am honored to introduce our panelists. And we have Richard Honey, QC barrister in England and Wales and Northern Ireland, and chair of the UK Sierra Leone Pro Bono Network. Welcome, Richard. We also have Jadida Waruhiu, advocate of the High Court of Kenya and former commissioner of the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights. Welcome, Jadida. We also have Jayshree Satpute, human rights lawyer in India and co-founder of Nazdeek NGO. Welcome, Jayshree. And lastly, we have Susie Turner, partner and chair of Descartes firm-wide pro bono practice USA. Welcome, Susie. I would now ask the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, starting with Richard.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Richard Honey. I'm a barrister practicing in public and environmental law in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And I'm chair of the steering group of the UK Sierra Leone Pro Bono Network. That's an organisation which has been in existence since about 2013. We are a collective of judges and lawyers and legal organisations. We don't have any corporate existence as such, no funding, although we do receive support from the Roll UK programme and A4ID. The overall chair of the network is Linda Dobbs, retired High Court judge, and my vice chairs of the steering group are Jalaga King, a barrister, and Rebecca Perlman of Herbert Smith Freehills. We've also got Momo Toure, who's our part-time country director based in Freetown, Sierra Leone. We're an umbrella network for UK judges, legal professionals and organisations interested in providing pro bono legal assistance to Sierra Leone. And we act as a focus for demand from Sierra Leone for assistance in legal matters, both from the government and legal professionals and civil society organisations and institutions. The way that we work is to try to set out a long-term rolling programme of work aimed at meeting that demand in collaboration with partners in Sierra Leone. So we coordinate UK lawyers and organisations to deliver that long-term programme to meet the demands from Sierra Leone. We've been working in particular over the last few years to try to coordinate what we do with Sierra Leone's justice sector strategy, and also from 2015 onwards their Ebola recovery plan. And the way that we work is either to find UK organisations to help meet a need as a kind of matchmaker, I suppose, an organisation or a law firm to partner with a Sierra Leonean organisation. And we've had involvement, for example, from the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, the British and Irish Association of Law Librarians, the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, and the Judicial Institute for Africa. Or secondly, we'll put bespoke teams together, especially, for example, the work that we do with the Judiciary of Sierra Leone. And our work is both remote from the UK and in country. And we work on training, policy development, law reform, and providing legal support to organisations, including on live cases. We're coordinated with other pro bono programmes in relation to Sierra Leone, including, for example, Herbert Smith Freehill's Fair Deal Sierra Leone programme, where they provide free legal advice to the government. Our longest partnership has probably been with the Judiciary of Sierra Leone, and we've worked on many projects with them, including in particular training. And we've also worked in the field of anti-corruption, extractives, governance, legal information and libraries, sexual and gender-based violence as well. The kind of law reform programs we've been working on include the repeal of the criminal libel laws, some new cybercrime laws which have just been passed, and the repeal of the death penalty. And I'll say some more perhaps about some of our more recent work later on in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Can we move on to Jadida, please?
Good afternoon and good evening all. My name is Jadida and I'm a human rights lawyer based in Kenya, trained in Kenya and also in the United Kingdom. I specialize on matters of access to justice with a particular focus on issues of legal aid, security, migration, penal matters and intersex matters. I've worked with both state and non-state organizations, and recently I just completed my call to duty serving with the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. I'm a board member with the Federation of Women Lawyers, popularly known as FIDA Kenya, which is a women's organization that promotes and protects the dignity and rights of women and children. We provide the services on legal aid, counseling, mediation, law reform, self-representation training, community outreach, and also to preparing women for national political leadership. I'm also a board member with the Crime CPOA, which means crime is not cool or is not good. It is a youth safety awareness initiative that focuses on youth at risk and in the community, and also youth in prison and remand homes in Kenya. It's important to note that over 70% of our prison inmates are young people below the age of 30 years old. So Youth CPOA supports the youth by providing legal aid services, social enterprise initiatives, counseling, spiritual nourishment, policy advocacy, community outreach, and public education. Today, I'll be sharing my experience and with these two institutions this afternoon, and that is where I'm going to be sharing from. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adida. Can we move on swiftly to Jayshree, please?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thanks for hosting this panel. My name is Jayshree Satpute. I am a human rights lawyer. I practice before various high courts and Supreme Court in India. I'm also co-founder of an organization called Nazdeek. Nazdeek means to bring to be close. Nazdeek is a legal empowerment organization committed to bringing access to justice closer to marginalized communities in India. We have recently also done scoping in other neighboring countries in South Asia. Our model fuses grassroots legal education, community monitoring of service deliveries, use of judicial and non-judicial remedies, and advocacy to advance social and economic rights. We largely work with tea plantation workers in northeast state of India, Assam. You all might have heard about Black Assam tea. That's where it comes from. And we also work with slum dwellers in Delhi, predominantly women, and we work with garment factory workers in south of India in Tamil Nadu. Our model works through by building leadership amongst women in various communities to build them as future leaders, where they can participate in negotiations, they can participate in residential welfare associations, and they can voice their concerns and fight for their own rights. We predominantly work on constitutional rights like right to food, right to housing, right to safe motherhood, along with labor rights. Today, I'll be sharing my experience of specifically working in tea sector and fighting for rights of workers in the tea sector of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayshree. Susie, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susie Turner, and I am the pro bono partner at Deckert, and I, along with the team, help run Deckert's pro bono program worldwide. I'm actually based in DC, but I started my pro bono career at Deckert in our London office. One of the closest pro bono partners Deckert has was with an organization called Freedom Now. Freedom Now is a DC-based NGO that's set up to seek the release of prisoners of conscience around the world. Their objective is to mobilize attorneys throughout the world to take on individual political prisoners directly as pro bono clients and conduct legal, political, and public relations advocacy to gain their release. So we have had a partnership with Freedom Now since 2012. And key to the success of that program has been our leadership team that has been consistently running the program for the last 10 years. It's run by one of my partners named Jeremy Zucker, who's an international trade lawyer based in DC. And he's actually chaired Freedom Now's board for more than a decade. And our leadership team has really developed a well-honed program that sees Deckert lawyers from around the world, seeing each case from start to finish with an objective of identifying political prisoners and then attempting to secure their release. And when I say we are involved from start to finish, one of the primary things we do is working with Freedom Now is help identifying these prisoners throughout the world. So every summer we have a group of 10 to 12 summer associates who literally scan the globe, looking for individuals who might not have representation or whose local council might need international human rights assistance in identifying these prisoners. We let our summer associates basically go. They scan the globe. And over the decade, they've come up with cases that needed help. And after they identify and do a write-up memo, the Freedom Now board then votes as to whether or not they want to take on a particular case. And if they've accepted the case, they then turn it back to Deckert so that we have a partnership to take it on. The next step is always staffing it up. After our cases are selected, we staff our cases with a multi-office team of lawyers from out the globe and looking at, among other things, legal skills, human rights ability, and again, multi-office teams. And what we do is basically at any given time, we have been pursuing up to a dozen cases. Each team's initial objective is to secure a legal decision supporting the release of the prisoner. Typically that involves a petition to the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, which, as many of you I'm sure know, is a multinational body of independent human rights experts empowered to investigate cases of arbitrary arrest and detention in signatory countries. The view of Freedom Now is if we can get the working group on board, it's basically an unassailable foundation on which we can then base our political advocacy. So the legal work is only one small part of what we do because, for example, just last week, we got a great decision seeking the release of a prisoner, but invariably that gets ignored. And so we then go from there, doing all sorts of political advocacy around the world. And that's in no small part why we have a global team in place. So for example, we ensure that someone from the US or the UK is on each team so that they can do local parliamentary or US congressional advocacy. And we take our guidance from Freedom Now, because sometimes the best approach is generating as much noise as possible. And other times the best approach is going a quiet diplomatic route. So we rely on Freedom Now for lots of things, including, and that's really become the foundation of the successful partnership. They provide us training, both in-house training, as well as we have a video training on tape. So our people can get onboarded at any given time. They provide us templates and documents from prior campaigns so we can see what's worked and not worked. And they, again, also provide our attorneys with essential strategic advice, because they have a softer touch. They know what works or what wouldn't work, where some of our attorneys might be a little clueless. They're all sort of full bore, let's go. And maybe that's not the right approach in a particular occasion. Since we started the partnership, we have handled upwards of 50 cases, several being successful. Most recently, we had a wonderful success out of Mauritania for a man named Mohamed Mukatir, who was arrested in 2013 for publishing a Facebook post on the nexus between religion, racism, and discrimination. And he was arrested for apostasy and was sentenced to death. And we managed to get a great decision out of the UN working group and then ultimately secured his release. So that in sum is a description of our program. I'm happy to.
Thank you very much, Susie. Very diverse panel that I have here. Moving on to the discussion topics quickly. Working in partnerships across jurisdiction. And I'll start off with Susie this time. What are the benefits of working within partnerships across jurisdiction, particularly for increasing the sustainability of pro bono work, in your opinion?
Well, there are a lot, including the fact that at least with this particular project that we're working on, one of the impediments or one of the difficulties in pro bono working across different offices is you often have to be licensed in the jurisdiction in which you're practicing in to do the work. And in at least the Freedom Now human rights context, you don't have to be licensed in any particular jurisdiction to do a petition before the UN working group. So it's been a great way to bring attorneys from all of our offices together to be able to work together on the project. And then, the other benefits of working across offices in a firm and nor from that project. It's a great way for attorneys to work for a common goal, whether they're in Singapore or whether they're in Orange County, California, helping in this case secure the release of a political prisoner.
Thank you, Susie. Jadida, your experience spans across East Africa. Can you just share with us what the benefits are for working within partnerships across jurisdictions, particularly for increasing the sustainability of pro bono work?
Thank you very much. I think it's important to note that a majority of these partnerships are usually local or sub-regional, and a number of the partnerships are international. But majority of these partnerships focus on issues of sharing ideas, developing innovation or products, and also skills transfer, including issues like litigation. Some of the benefits that we have seen, I'll mention three. One is enhancing co-creation. And you see that this provides an opportunity to co-create products together and respond to the local needs. And these products are very relevant to the local environment and also meet international standards. And I'll give an example of FIDA Kenya, where we partnered with Lawyers Without Borders to develop 2 information manuals based on many years of FIDA's experience in providing legal aid to the indigent and also responding to the needs of SGBV clients. And these two manuals, one is a process manual on access to justice, which can be used by anyone, any person who is accessing court, even a self-representing client. And two, a manual on SGBV, an SGBV guide to lawyers, which again is very useful to lawyers who are supporting SGBV clients, but also more importantly, it helps them in counseling and reducing the re-traumatization of clients that are in this status, in this state. Secondly, these partnerships also have the benefit of locating technical expertise at the community level. And we find that it brings together like-minded technical experts across the jurisdiction to work on advocacy initiatives of public interest, litigation, or even mentorship, which is a very good opportunity for young lawyers, law students, paralegals who are keen on public service. And this benefit is not only immediately available in terms of the technical resource, but it's a resource that then you can tap into the future. Allow me to give the example of Crime CPOA, which partnered with the American Insurance Group to support them on SGBV campaign on Safe Spaces campaign, which we dubbed hashtag SGBV in Anichok, which means SGBV is choking us. This partnership was very useful because it was triggered by the pandemic, rise in terms of SGBV cases. And the partnership provided both legal technical advisory and also financial support to be able to run a campaign online and also to provide physical legal aid service to 3 poor income areas. And also it assisted locate that partnership with a community-based initiative known as Shining Hope for Communities. Thirdly, the other benefit that you see is that there is certainty in the value for money. Though the partnership is in kind, but it is based on non-tangible resources in kind. And you find that the value that is given, one, you are able to identify the real need of that institution or that community. And then the technical expertise given is very important to provide the programmatic direction. The hidden cost benefit of this partnership is very, very valuable, and it's also sustainable to that organization. And our reference, FIDA Kenya, where we partnered with Initiative for Strategic Litigation in Africa, where we partnered to develop a feminist lawyers network in Kenya and also build the capacity of our in-house lawyers towards public interest litigation. And we can begin seeing the value of this rich partnership. And because we are beginning to ask ourselves, how do we replicate this skill internally to the many FIDA members who are lawyers, who are our support resource for public interest litigation. And this in essence will provide a much more cost-effective way of hiring and retaining pro bono lawyers on public interest litigation matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adida. Richard, if I can just turn to you and just ask the same question, basically, what are the benefits of working with partnership? And how do you think, in your experience, it can sustain the pro bono work you do?
Yes. Well, I suppose let me mention 2 things. One is the actual approach of having a network as we do, which is that we've been able through that to demonstrate a commitment to pro bono work in Sierra Leone for more than 7 years now. We worked through Ebola in 2014, 2015, and are now working through COVID. And we've built up, I think, the trust of partners in Sierra Leone over time by proving what we've been able to do. We've been able to deliver for them. We've also been able to focus on delivering what they want, being led by the demand of our partners in Sierra Leone. And the idea of having a long-term partnership as well ensures that things are actually followed up. We're not just, as it were, flying in to do some training or something, we're putting everything that we do in the context of a long-term coordinated plan. And indeed, as part of that, we're able to forge links between different Sierra Leonean organizations as well, where we cooperate with a number of groups. So I think it's by establishing those kind of direct links and partnerships, it means that they're going to be enduring in the future. So it is going to be sustainable. Part of what we do, as I said earlier, is as a matchmaker, so that we're able to put people in touch and then help, but leave them to it. Other things we do more directly ourselves. A part of it as well, of course, is being able to build long-term relationships with the UK organisations that are involved in the network as well. So we've done a number of projects over the years with the International Law Book Facility, for example, who've been excellent partners on working to build a number of law libraries in Sierra Leone. So we've been able to build relationships within the UK as well as Sierra Leonean organizations. And one critical element as well to add in addition to that is that we've had the benefit of a part-time country director, Momo Toure. He's been involved for about 7 years now, almost from our very start. Initially in the UK as the secretary to the network, and then when he moved back to Freetown as our coordinator and country director in Freetown, he has a long experience of working in the justice sector in Sierra Leone, a deep understanding of the way things work in Sierra Leone, and good relationships with all the main justice sector players. And that has really helped. Having someone on the ground, albeit part-time, has really helped in Freetown. And his, as it were, proven competence and build-up of trusting relationships has meant that he's then been invited by some of our Sierra Leonean partners to do more work with them. So, for example, he's heavily involved with all the training that the Sierra Leone judiciary do, not only those elements of it that we're involved in, and has also been, for example, assisting with policy work for partners and assisting partner organizations, for example, in articulating their development needs to others to make sure that they can get what they want from other international development agencies and partners. So this kind of both the network approach, I suppose, and the long-term coordinated approach, I hope means that we've ended up with a sustainable approach to pro bono work between the UK and Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much, Richard. And Jayshree, can we just get your take on that as well?
Yeah, certainly. As I said, we work on tea, and tea is sourced in almost every country in the world. But when you look at the working and living conditions, they are very bad. Workers do not get even paid minimum wage according to the local standards and laws. But when the local organizations, an organization like ours, have done advocacy and had worked towards improving the living and working conditions on this plantation, that has yielded very little result. But then that's why it has become really important for us to forge cross-jurisdictional partnerships and work on transparency in supply chain, and really to figure out from which plantation the tea is going to which box and is sourced to which country, and where all we can put pressure to get some transparency in the supply chain, so that we can say, if a plantation you're sourcing tea to UK, and if UK consumers and the partners in UK help us build pressure there, then that might kind of like help in building momentum for local partners, workers, in getting better wage, better living conditions, better working conditions. And companies these days, corporate these days, are care about their brand and goodwill much more than real kind of like transformation on the ground and providing the workers their share and their dues. One of the such example I want to share is in 2013 we had built a long with 3 local organizations. We had filed a complaint with the World Bank's group, World Bank's internal compliance mechanism, which is called Compliance Advisory Ombudsman, against Amalgamated Plantation Private Limited, of which Tata Group is a majority shareholder. And the complaint had raised concerns about inhuman labor and working conditions on these 3 plantations. While we are experts on ground and we can collect data, mobilize workers, share information with workers, but we just did not have expertise to know what happens in DC, what all events happen there, how to advocate at that level, what it takes to build pressure at that level. And really at that point, we had forged partnership with an organization called Accountability Council, who assist organizations who are filing complaints against the mega projects. And that partnership had really helped us understanding that side of the equation. While we are experts on the local condition, collecting data, amplifying voices of workers, we really understood from them what it takes at the World Bank level to mobilize and get a strong report, a strong outcome. And I think on issues like we work on, cross-jurisdictional partnerships are really important, because the local organizations do not have resources to fly in and fly out and take on these advocacy in different countries and get results. At that point, if we have a partner in UK, which is a very big consumer of tea, it helps to build that pressure from consumers in UK, which might then help workers in India.
Thank you very much for that, Jayshree. And we're living in a current pandemic right now, and means of communication has changed. And the work you do, being pro bono work, may have involved a lot of traveling in the past, but as it is now, this is a challenge. So how do you navigate to how has the pandemic changed your communication methods and affected your relationship, particularly within your peer-to-peer partnerships? And I'll start off with Richard, please.
Thank you. Yes, well, I suppose it's obviously been very bad in a number of respects, but there are some advantages to it. So we've been able to extend the expertise that we can call on. So we're extending our reach, for example, to try to bring in more law firm support from overseas. So we've had lawyers from Aiken Gump in the United States volunteer to assist in our anti-corruption work. We're also discussing with a team from White & Case based in Dubai whether they can assist. So the new modes of working we've all had to develop are really helping extend our reach. We've also ourselves been able to take advantage of, Zoom meetings, for example. We're doing some work to support the Anti-Corruption Commission and the Anti-Corruption Division of the High Court on sentencing guidelines and practice directions. And that work involves people based in Manchester and Scotland, for example. So it's much easier to work together in these kind of teams using Zoom rather than having to have physical or telephone meetings. And it's also a bit less burdensome, frankly, on people having to give up their spare time for pro bono work. We can have Zoom meetings and discussions, documents by email, for example, which is a lot less burdensome for people. One thing as far as Sierra Leone is concerned, which has been really excellent, is that a lot of international events have been held online, which means that we've been able to participate. So Sierra Leonean judges were able to attend the online meeting of the Standing International Forum of Commercial Courts, for example, whereas they might have struggled to get there physically. We held a round table between the Chief Justice of Sierra Leone and some UK judges to discuss how the new Sexual Offences Court in Sierra Leone should operate, for example, and we're able to do that using Zoom, and hopefully we'll be able to follow that up on a remote platform as well with some training. We were able to have discussions with the Sierra Leone Bar Association, for example, while they were forming their position on the repeal of the death penalty They held meetings on that we were able to join because that was being done via Zoom, and we were able as well to attend the Bar Association annual conference because that was held physically, but also with Zoom attendees from Sierra Leone as well. So, for example, Aiken Gump have been providing support to the National Revenue Authority, and they were able to watch the session of the Bar Council conference on tax law reform. And I suppose the other thing that it has made a lot more important, if that was possible, frankly, was having Momo Ture in Freetown as our country director to keep up the relationships, to attend meetings as our representative, to feed back to us. And we couldn't have done what we do without him. But also, fortunately, we've had some members of the steering group who've been able to visit Sierra Leone during the pandemic for work reasons. So Jalaga King, Vice Chair, is a barrister in the UK, but also in Sierra Leone. Lloydette Baimara, who leads on our anti-corruption work, has also visited as well. So being able to continue some in-country presence during the pandemic has also been really important in order to maintain those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And Jayshree, can we just hear from you as well? What has been the opportunities and the challenges as well in the pandemic?
Our legal system has been inaccessible even before pandemic. Going to court and access to court has been daunting, but the Supreme Court has been shut for last 1.5 years with online hearings, and similar with the High Court, which has again further reduced the access to people who have laptops, internet connection. So it is the justice system has become inaccessible. The grievance mechanisms which the state had in place has become non-responsive and that's why inaccessible in a sense. And during pandemic, our entire labor law regime has changed. The labor laws which were there before pandemic, they were repealed and been replaced by new 4 codes with little public consultation. While during pandemic, it is our work of documentation, fact findings, trainings have been really impacted. But what opportunity it had opened up was that we were able to do online consultations with workers, worker representative, paralegals and take their comments on these new labor laws and really put those comments together, multiple consultation across jurisdictions, and give those comments to the government on what the take of unions and workers across jurisdiction on these labor laws have been. Pre-pandemic, I don't think people would have had that, would have had that ability to sit across the computer for hours and get the consultation and really the notes done on these issues. We've also seen our paralegals who we had to travel always to kind of get feedback and do groundwork have now become tech savvy. They know how to use Zoom. They know how to use different annotations and tools on Zoom. We have been meeting more often than we would have met if we have been going back and forth the field. So that has been an added component of use of technology. But I would say that the downside of technology has been curtailed, or even the access to justice have become even more difficult.
Fantastic, thank you, Jayshree. And moving on to Jadida, the global pandemic has instigated an increased use of technology to conduct your work. What are the consequences of this, positive or negative, with your pro bono partnerships? Can you just share with us, please, on that?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it remains true now that communication has really changed. It's no longer the physical contact, eyeball to eyeball, or telephone calls, or just having social meetings. Indeed, when you look at the situation of Kenya, before, when you talked about issues of technology in terms of Skype, Zoom, WhatsApp, you would associate them with high-level personalities or serious institution. But now with the pandemic, that has been blurred. And now a majority of people are now using technology to do a lot of their works. Therefore, it will not be a surprise when you find a child chatting on Zoom. I think it's important to understand the context of Kenya in that like over 20 million Kenyans hold mobile phones, and that's like half of the population. 97 of them access information through the mobile gadgets. And unfortunately, when you think about the bandwidth, the speeds are below 2 to 10 Mbps, which is where a majority of people are. So even when you think about technology, you have to be aware and sensitive to the limitations of access and of connectivity. However, that has not stopped our work. And I want to give a few examples from FIDA. Because of the court going digital and having virtual court hearings and even e-filing, we had to, and a number of our clients are self-representing, and many of them do not have the knowledge or the capacity to use virtual technology. And therefore, what we did as FIDA is to launch for last year what we call virtual justice centers, which are virtual stations where the self-representing clients can come, and they are in 3 of our offices nationally to be able to engage with the court. So we've trained them on how to engage using that technology so that they can participate in their court processes. We also went further and had those virtual justice centers in the prisons, so that also the women prisoners, we have 4 prisons where the women inmates are now able to access courts using the virtual justice centers. We thought that was it, but then we realized that for you to be a self-representing client, and to engage with the court in terms of issues on filing, we had to train them how to open a personal email and how to use it so that they can be able to get access. Now, because of that, we are now able to have virtual court hearings. We have advanced this to having virtual mediations, even virtual trainings on self-representation and virtual counseling. Again, we stepped up the use of technology with the launch of a toll-free call center, specifically to help us respond to SGBV issues last year. And from there, we started providing telelegal aid to the women and girls so that we're able to assist them in how to be able to deal with their situation. And this has really been such a good opportunity in terms of support, because we find that we have received over 8,000 calls. Over 1,000 of them are specifically from SGBV clients. And that means like 3 SGBV cases a day. And most of these cases, you'll find SGBVs from partner violence, defilement, or child custody matters. The last example I want to give is from Crime CPOA. Youth and gadgets are inseparable. And therefore, this has provided an opportunity on working with the youth better, especially in the low-income neighborhoods, where Crime CPOA provides the opportunity to empower the youth. And so we've equipped them with digital gadgets, data bundles, so that they can be able to start creating and promoting a safe and free society within their neighborhoods through developing community safety initiatives and also small business enterprises, so that we have the youth stay away from crime. Indeed, this method earned Crime CPOA global recognition, and this year we were recognized by the Global Fund for Children for the Juliet Jimon Courage Award. Lastly, because information transmission is very, very important, Crime CPOA has decided that it's going to do 5-minute short clips pre-recorded legal issues, either on particular issues of law or even legal instruction, so that these clips are available especially to low-income communities who are able to listen to them. And we are currently negotiating with where we have a lot of walk-in small video halls where these clips can be shown at least 5 minutes before the main show, either for free using that institution as their CSR, or on a small fee. I think it's important to note as I conclude that technology is just but a bridge, but it is not the answer to the existing access to justice needs. And if you ask any person who has an access to justice challenge to choose between technology and food, they'll still choose food. I think the other thing that has also come very clear for us in terms of lesson, pro bono lawyers, paralegals, they too have been impacted by the pandemic and also infected by the pandemic. And therefore, when you think about austerity measures, they too need a quick recovery to support. And lastly, it's also very clear as we continue to do our work in access to justice, we can no longer do it assuming that the other stakeholder is at the same par with you. We also have to begin asking ourselves, how do we develop their digital infrastructure? Because a lot of the infrastructure that is there either in the police station or in the judiciary or the prisons, a lot of it is security driven, not access to justice or pro bono driven. Therefore, we need to start developing and supporting the digital infrastructure, the capacity of the administration of justice agencies, and also thinking about institutional policies on technology and also the national policies on technology in terms of data, in terms of security, and also in terms of connectivity and access. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adida. Again, a reminder to our audience, please ask questions. You can use the Q&A feature on your Zoom webinar. We want to see as many questions as we possibly can. All right. Moving on to Susie. Can you please share with us as well how the pandemic has affected your communication methods and affected your relationships, particularly within peer-to-peer partnerships? And I'm quite curious as well to know how it has affected your work with the prisons.
I'll start off with that. I mean, the pandemic has affected our ability to handle these cases at very different levels, you know, and communication with our clients has been the biggest impediment. It's always been difficult to communicate with our clients. They're in prison, you know, and we often relied on our local counsel to have those face-to-face contacts. You know, occasionally, you know, a phone is smuggled into a prison and we can connect with people in that way. But that face-to-face communication has in many jurisdictions been completely cut off, you know, in various jurisdictions during the pandemic, which has been exceptionally problematic, not only to proceed with the legal cases, but also just for the mental health and support of our clients, you know, which leaves us exceptionally concerned. You know, hopefully as restrictions lighten up, we will have more access again, but it is a concern, you know. In terms of our communications internally within the firm and with Freedom Now, you know, in some respects, the pandemic has seen a silver lining with Zoom. Our attorneys who've never seen each other face to face before are like, oh, that's you. So in that way, the pandemic and Zoom, you know, and other sort of virtual ways of connecting has been a benefit. You know, team meetings are easier to create, and it's enhanced our relationship with Freedom Now in having that sort of remote yet face-to-face communication. I mean, Freedom Now is a small organization, and they rely on firms like us to, you know, to help expand their ability to provide services throughout the globe. So the tighter their connections are, and the more our attorneys bond, you know, with the attorneys at Freedom Now, the better for the future of, you know, our shared goals and program. But, you know, the bottom line is we're here to serve the clients who are in prison, and it has not been good. And the other, you know, sort of unforeseen aspect, and it's not a technology aspect of this, is that we rely on our summer associates for screening first level cases and finding them. And we canceled our summer program last summer, which really put a hitch in our program. And that wasn't something that I had expected to happen. So we're making up for lost ground right now. But that was something that impacted our program through the pandemic.
All right, thank you very much. And now moving on swiftly so we can have time for some questions and answers. I'll start off with Susie briefly. How do you think your international pro bono partnership will operate differently moving on after the pandemic, I guess, or within the pandemic, whether there'll be a normalcy again? What do you think?
I think there will be a normalcy. I mean, in fact, other than connections with the clients, the pandemic hasn't affected, and the slowness of courts, the slowness of domestic courts. And, I can't tell if the UN working group how slowed it has been because of the pandemic, but I'm not sure, how much will change in the future. We internally will communicate better because of Zoom. I think those technological enhancements are here to stay. And that's kind of an exciting silver lining of the pandemic in my mind, that, we can be able to, have these easy, visual, maybe not in-person communications, because a lot of our work in this program has never been boots on the ground anyway. It has all been in a way that people can be at their desks and doing human rights work. So, I think going forward, we'll continue to use this virtual communication, but, not much will change beyond that.
Very well. Thank you. And Richard, can I get your perspective on that as well? How do you think things will operate differently from here on?
Yes, well, I mean, I suppose we're starting to think about that already with what we do. So I think some of our priorities for work have inevitably changed as a result of the pandemic. We have been doing much less in-country work, and I think there will be a continuation of that in the future. So some of the things that we've been doing, advocacy training for lawyers, it is needs really to be in country. We were also just as COVID hit last March, about to do some training for wildlife rangers in relation to countering the illegal wildlife trade on collecting evidence and giving evidence in court, and that's not going to happen now, I don't think. And also in part, COVID is affecting some of the activity that's happening in Sierra Leone. So perhaps in the extractive sector, there's less going on now than there was before. So partly it's going to change the priorities for our work. I think what it will mean, though, is that some of the things that we do will take advantage of the new technologies we've been forced to adapt. So we're planning, for example, to see whether we can do a number of hybrid events using technology, so that we'll be able to hold events physically in Sierra Leone with Sierra Leonean partners, but UK lawyers and judges, for example, will be able to participate from the UK. And we've had some experience of that working quite well already. So there have been a number of stakeholder meetings on the repeal of the death penalty in Sierra Leone, where there were present in the room representatives from civil society organizations, lawyers, and the diplomatic community, for example, at a physical meeting in Sierra Leone. But people from the UK, lawyers and the Death Penalty Project team, for example, being projected on the wall via Teams and being able to participate in the discussion that way. And that has worked surprisingly well. So we've been able to attend meetings effectively, and that's worked really well. And what we're hoping at the moment for some judicial training and for some of the work that we're doing, for example, with law libraries, is to be able to organize similar hybrid training where there will be Sierra Leonean members of the training team, librarians, judges, etc., in the room conducting the training, with members of the faculty also from the UK participating remotely. And I suppose it's also, we need to judge this in context. One of the indirect impacts, at least, of COVID has been the very substantial reductions in UK aid spending. The UK government has made very substantial cuts in aid spending, justified in the main apparently by reference to COVID, and that has meant that we've needed to try to ramp up our efforts. For example, there was some work that was being planned on anti-corruption in Sierra Leone by the UK government, and that's been pulled. So we've had to set about trying to ramp up the pro bono effort that we make, and we'll be able to work with the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office in Sierra Leone. Their commitment still remains, even if the money's not there. And our working relationships with the British government representatives in Sierra Leone are as close as ever, frankly, because we've been able to meet them over Teams to discuss our pro bono work in a way that's not been possible before. So there are some significant direct as well as some indirect impacts of COVID, some of them very negative and some of them positive, but frankly it's all part and parcel really of a long-term partnership where you tailor yourself to whatever's going on in either the UK or the Sierra Leone end of things for our work.
Thank you very much, Richard. And Jadida, do you think things will operate differently in the post-pandemic world in terms of your international partnership?
Yes, they will, and no, they will not. And allow me to speak specifically and also generally, because I think the future is very useful for all of us. And also allow me to link with the previous thoughts I had on technology, because now it is very clear that the distance that used to be there between nations, national, international partnerships in terms of communication and also in terms of working together has really been almost like collapsed by the pandemic. And therefore it will no longer be that to collaborate or to connect, one has to move from one border, one continent to the other, from the north to the south or south to the north. That has really changed. And post-COVID, a lot of that will still be alive. Digital technology, though not the answer to issues of access to justice, has shown us that we must innovate digitally. It has shown us that we can be able to collaborate a lot, especially you asking ourselves, what are those things that we can be able to achieve virtually, and then leave the small portions of the work that only require you and I to move together to be able to do the pro bono work or to enhance the judicial initiatives. Therefore, we must change our mind frames and our speech so that we are able to fit within the digital channels that are available and that are applicable. So I'll have three issues to say that the partnerships that will of necessity need to adopt and also include. One, there'll need to be a lot of digital collaboration and digital information so that the digital divide is minimized in terms of access and also connectivity, so that only the real work is done. And we have great opportunities around the areas of the opportunities that are emerging around artificial intelligence, around virtual reality, and also blockchain technology. And for areas where we work, which are marginalized and with vulnerable people, also the use of how do we tap into issues of solar and wind power to be able to promote these pro bono partnerships at the community level where they really need the services that we provide. The second area is that we also have to, we are going to have a multifaceted approach. And this, I mean, we'll call upon more now on the private sector to be able to support a dual or multilateral, multiple engagement that focuses on a singular issue, but has so much interconnectedness. And why do I say this? Because when you think about where FIDA Kenya and Crime Support work in the administration of justice, you realize for us to work effectively with those justice agencies, and the one of the quick parameters of using is digital technology, then we have to look at the weaknesses around those that area. And lastly, the future looks for us to having a more solid community approach to the partnerships that we have, because we want to promote the role of law in and the role of law with the communities, especially those who are marginalized and disadvantaged. That means that for us then to tap into those areas effectively, because we don't know how long COVID will be here, we must begin thinking about how do we establish like justice information internet cafes in those low-income areas, in those rural areas, so that they can be able to get maximum benefit of this international partnership that is being created at this higher level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jayshree. Sorry, Jadida. And lastly, Jayshree, can we just get your take on it? How would things operate?
Yes. So we are just going through the second wave and there are already talks of third wave. So honestly, to imagine the post-pandemic world is feeling a little difficult right now. But just to give you a glimpse of the situation of workers is already the laws, policies, and the decisions made by government for their working and living conditions were inaccessible. With organizations like ours not being able to travel to the remotest part and train and communicate these laws and policies in simplified manner to workers is they're further isolated, and these laws and policies and what is beneficial for them has become further inaccessible. Various schools in India has moved to online learning, but when we talk about children of plantation workers, they don't have cell phones. There's no internet there. So what has happened? The school have been converted into quarantine centers and been shut down. And the community who has worked so hard to deal with dropout rates and getting children into schools are now at square one. And there is a likelihood of these children like getting into the workforce again at a very early age. So that's a massive difficulty we are seeing with the pandemic. And then the other thing is the lawyers and advocates like us who are supporting local organizations on a very critical issues. And the internet has been monitored with every meeting, Zoom meetings and everything. It is very difficult to have critical conversations without internet. And how do you feel secure as an advocate to have those conversations with local organizations on their rights and on campaigning, on planning, on demanding better working and living conditions, which at times is seen as might anti-national activity. So we really do not feel secure having critical strategic conversations on internet, and it just puts lawyers like us at risk, at a further risk. We are in a country where Facebook has sued government to defend privacy of their users. Like, what have we come to? So we just don't really, as advocates who are working on critical human rights issues, feel secure to do all our conversations, all our meetings, all our client consultations, all our community consultations on internet. If we look at how the communities who already did not have access to fundamental rights, how they're being further excluded and being isolated, and actors like us who do not have access, it will create a massive gap. And I hope that we are able to fill that up in post-pandemic world, and I hope that the technology gets to the most remotest part. But for even the access of technology, worker needs to be paid well to be able to pay for internet, to be able to pay for smartphone, and I don't know when that will happen.
Thank you very much, Jayshree. And moving on quickly to the Q&A. It's good to see we have 4 questions, and I'll start off with the first one, which is, what would the panel say is key to the successful international pro bono partnership, and how do we measure that success? I'll start off with Susie on this one, briefly.
I think there are a couple keys to success, and all of the programs or projects we've talked about, the different panelists today, their remits are quite different, and the one I've been talking about is fairly narrow, and so the success measures for us have been, I think, one, leadership and consistent leadership, having a team in place that is passionate about the issue, that is educated and can sort of train people internally about the issue, and it ensures longevity. B, having a community partner like with us, Freedom Now, who really sees the benefit of these kind of partnerships. And, you know, it's beyond just using us to get funding from time to time. It's really making us feel that we are part and parcel of getting their work done. And that, I think, has been indispensable. And 3, Freedom Now's approach that they understand that this is not what Deckard does, Deckard lawyers do on a day-to-day basis, and give us the support and training to be able to do that. And I guess fourthly, because of the long-term nature of this, we've actually gotten good at what we do. And we have a system in place where we have created efficiencies. And so that we are more effective and arguably more impactful because we're not reinventing the wheel every time we take one of these cases on. We have a process, we have internal knowledge. And so I think those 4 factors together have created a really nice partnership that has been sustainable over the long term.
Thank you very much, Susie. Can I get your take on that, please, Richard, as well? How, what would you say is the success to international pro bono work, and how do you measure the success?
Yes, I think that the key to successful partnerships is just really having good human relationships with the people involved and being able then to establish trust. So that's something that I think we've been able to do in Sierra Leone. We've been able then to try to transfer those relationships where there have been changes. So, you know, we've had a number of different heads of the organizations that we work with as partners, for example. You know, chief justices, attorneys general, etc., have changed over the years that we've been working there, the heads of the Anti-Corruption Commission, etc. But luckily, we've got good relationships with people in the organization, and indeed, generally speaking, we've built good relationships with the individuals before they're appointed to those posts. So human relationships and the trust that goes with them, I think, is key. In terms of how you measure it, I think that's more difficult. You know, providing legal advice, support and training is very different to measure objectively. I tend to approach it as a lawyer that if you do some work for clients, and that's all we do, you know, work, we don't provide money for anyone. So if you do some work for clients and they come back and ask for more in the future, that's an indication that what you're doing is a positive and it's helpful, because they come back and want more of it in the future. I think there's more that needs to be done. We work in particular with Roll UK to try to develop objective measures of success. But ultimately, if people continue to ask for your help, having experienced it already, then I think that's a fairly good indicator that the partnership is being successful.
Thank you very much, Richard. And the next question from our audience is, recognizing that data cost and internet connectivity can make video calls or Zoom meetings difficult, has the panel found any creative solutions to help with local engagement and connecting with key actors? And can I have Jadida to respond to that one, please?
Yes, I think I can re-echo specifically the things that FIDA has done in terms of creating a pilot justice access points that are virtual, so that those who are vulnerable, like those who are in custody or in prison, are able to use those virtual centers. Those are some of the creative ways that we have used. However, I think it's important for us, because those have more been reacting to the situation as it unfolds. And but I think in the long term, we need to think about what are things that we can do more sustainably with these partnerships. And one of the things I mentioned earlier was especially in places that are inaccessible or have access but don't have the infrastructure, is to create justice information internet cafes or centers where anybody and everybody who is interested or who has a keen issue on access to justice can be able to use that facility. A long-term measure also is really to think around the taxation around digital connectivity. There is huge taxation around connectivity. There's huge taxation around gadgets. And there are no exemptions to that. So I think we really need to work around that to see how we can reduce that taxation, how we can work very tactfully with the private sector and also with governments to bring that down, especially for those institutions, organizations that are working to promote the rule of law and focusing on those who are already vulnerable, and also to those people like the persons living with disability who already do not have that as one of their benefit waivers to be able to access that. And finally, because connectivity also comes with the use of electricity, like for example, during this session, I've had to shift my gadgets because of electricity, which I had not anticipated or planned on. If I was using solar or wind power, that would not have happened. I'm just privileged to be able to shift from a desktop to my phone to be able to continue with this conversation. So that flexibility can only be enjoyed by those who are already privileged, but we need to use the already natural existing resources of solar and wind power to be able to also begin bridging that gap. So there's a big economic, social campaign that we need to start mounting and dealing with so that that technological divide is minimized and reduced so that we do not continue to make people who are already vulnerable more vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adida. And Jayshree, can you quickly just answer that question as well?
Yeah, we have
had technology challenge.
Yeah, we have had creative solutions. Like if there are 4 people on Zoom call and one person is not able to connect, we will call them and put the phone near the speaker. That's one thing we've been doing. The other thing is just conference calls. And we have also been able to build a larger network of paralegals now, so that if someone like people, then like 1 or 2 people would come together and in the safe environment can share the phone, the device or gadget, some things like those. Just one-on-one phone conversations, and wherever the connectivity allows, the Zoom conversation has been the key to it. We are innovating as we go, and we switch. Yeah, WhatsApp or Signal has been good option to Zoom with low bandwidth use.
Thank you, Jayshree. And then we have a question that says, what do the panelists think of the UK government international development aid budget slice on pro bono work and partnership amidst the COVID-19, which is already having a toll on pro bono work? I'm not sure if all the panelists work with the UK government, but I'm thinking Richard does. So can we start off with Richard on that question, please?
Yeah, thank you. Happy to deal with that. I mean, I think it is going to have a significant effect on support to rule of law and justice work that's been provided by the UK government in recent years following the 0.7% commitment. How far it goes in terms of affecting pro bono work, I think is a different question, because pro bono work, generally speaking, it is done independently by the lawyers and others involved in it. But pro bono work does have a cost. So not only, for example, as far as we're concerned, we've got the need to employ Momo Toure as our country director, albeit on a part-time basis. when you're asking lawyers not only to take time off work from earning, and many of the barristers, for example, involved in our work are self-employed, so if they're not working, they're not earning anything. But then if they also have to travel to Sierra Leone and pay for their own travel costs and accommodation and so on, then that makes it much more difficult, particularly for those people that are working in publicly funded areas, like criminal law, for example, who are not earning anywhere near as much as many of the kind of corporate lawyers. So being able, at the very least, to fund travel expenses so that people are not out of pocket as well as losing earnings has been quite important to what we've been able to do. And at the moment, it looks like that's not going to be happening, at least for the foreseeable future. So it will have a toll on pro bono work that we're able to do, especially in country work. But it means really that we've got to ramp up our efforts to do things remotely and try to do as much as we can to help fill the gaps that are created as a result of this. And keep our fingers crossed, I suppose, that this is genuinely short term, as the government has said it is. But I think, certainly from those people that we speak to, from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, for example, the commitment to the rule of law is not diminished. It's simply the money that's available at the moment. So we're hoping that we can see this period through, do the best we can to keep things ticking over, and then in a few years we'll get back to where we have been. But who knows? We'll need to keep our fingers crossed, I think.
Thank you, Richard. And a final question: as we come out of the global pandemic, what do the panel see as key learning or changes which they will adopt to strengthen their partnerships? Can I just ask Jayshree to deal with that one, please?
Sure. We would want to keep the dual strategy of like engaging remotely and on the ground. We would like certainly push our paralegals to use more technology. Like we used to do monitoring of the rights violation and document them. Now we have changed that to virtual platform where the website, and it will be available online, and they can directly input what have the violations been, what complaints has been filed, and what redressal it's needs. So it has gone virtual, and every paralegal, we do not need to call them, and they report, and then we upgrade, and it stays in-house in an Excel sheet with nobody knowing what kind of work has gone. That has now gone virtual. So monitoring has been happening well and has become more accessible. We would definitely want to continue that. We would want our paralegals who are on the ground and have never been able to travel or been part of the panels or conversations at the international level. Now with the assistance, I have been able to do that from the comfort of their home. And we would want to continue for the communities to raise their own issues at international platform rather than us being a flag bearer. So that we would want to continue, and we would want to bring those opportunities more and more to our grassroots partners and paralegals going forward. So we'll continue doing that. We will continue holding consultations online, but again, I'm a people's person, so I'm very looking forward to going on ground and doing the work in person. But there's some components we really want to retain.
Thank you for that, Jayshree. Can I have your perspective on that question, Susie, as well?
I would want to echo a lot of things that Jayshree said there. I mean, I think the idea that we can expand access to justice through technology has been sort of eye-opening for many of us, during the pandemic. The whole notion of, for example, remote clinics, to the extent that there have been basically deserts where there has been an inability for people to access legal aid, and the inability, because there is not a legal aid organization nearby. And attorneys in major cities haven't been willing necessarily to travel 5 hours to go. And so that access gap arguably can be lessened, can be narrowed through through technology. And I think we have seen people more receptive on both ends to having those consultations and advice giving done virtually. So yeah, obviously the key to that is to expand access to technology as much as possible, because it can't just be for those who are wealthy or middle income who can access that technology. So I think we have to be more creative about creating local hubs where people, whether through libraries or citizens advice bureaus or other places around the world, that people can go and access that technology and reach out to attorneys. So I think there's a lot of creativity that can come from the crisis that we had. They always say, don't miss the opportunity to take advantage of a crisis. And so, there's a lot that we could have learned about the use of technology to going forward in meeting access to justice needs.
Thank you, Susie. Richard, can we hear from you quickly on that one, please?
Yeah, I think really that it has forced us to adopt changes, particularly technological changes that might have taken 10 years to get used to otherwise. And it means that when we come out of this, we will have the choice of what to continue with. And I think that the technological changes and the way that people have been forced to adapt will give us some additional tools for doing pro bono work that didn't exist beforehand. And, the pandemic is awful, and the sooner it ends, the better. But when it does end, I think we will have learnt a lot from it, and we will be stronger in terms of our partnerships and in our way of working, because we've been able to get through it in the way in Sierra Leone, for example, we were able to get through Ebola, to show support during that period, to stick around and then be there afterwards as well. And that does contribute, I think, to the sustainability of long-term partnerships, building that trust and relationships.
Thank you very much, Richard. And lastly, Jadida, can we hear from you on that question?
Yes, I think one of the major lessons learned is that we are all vulnerable, and the world is now more vulnerable than it was before. And those who were already vulnerable before the pandemic are even more vulnerable. So it's very clear that our work at FIDA Kenya, which really focuses on women and children who are already vulnerable, and crime poor, who are the youth who are still vulnerable, and many of them unemployed. That work must continue, and therefore we must look for indigenous or homegrown innovative ways of continuing that work with the resources that we have, both financial, in kind, and technical. I think related to that is the lesson that the people are here to stay. With whether technology comes and grows or not, the people are here to stay. And before technology was the people, and after technology will still be the people. And it is the people who drive the technology. So we'll need to invest more on the people. And I see, for example, how do I replicate myself more within the community, so then the community can be able to take more action where they have no access to a pro bono lawyer, where they have no access to paralegal facilities. How do they take action to be able to deal with the issues that they have? Because it has become very more clearer now that even where government was absent during the pandemic, the people looked for innovative ways of survival and dealing with the issue. So they have the answers for themselves. So we have to invest more now in the community, very seriously, very deliberately, and with a lot of integrity and accountability, so that the issues of access to justice can move on, even where resources and partnerships are constrained, are limited, or are absent. And lastly, I see us refocusing more on economic social rights, because if and when we build, in fact, it's not if, when we build the economic strength, and especially of the vulnerable people like the women and the youth, then we'll be at a better place, and we will all survive even if there is a calamity like this that will come. So it is very important for us to begin connecting pro bono issues on access to justice with the underbelly, which is the economic strength of those clients and those communities that are in need of our service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edita. I believe we have come to the end of the webinar. And I would like to thank all of you, our very able panelists, for the time you've taken out of your schedules to be here with us today. I would also like to thank Aid for International Development for the opportunity that they've given us to be part of their inaugural conference. Thank you all very much. Thank you to the audience as well for being here and the questions that you've posed to the panel. Thank you. And that's the end of the webinar, I believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much to all of our panelists there, and to you, Zainab, for bringing in such an excellent session, and on time too. So I'm just here to again say thank you very much to our panel, and to say if you're looking for more things to do at the A4ID conference, we have next up our breakout session, which is starting right now, which is a well-being session. So we are having some guided breathing and stretching exercises with a local social enterprise called Supply Yoga. It should be very rejuvenating for all of us who've been sitting still for too long today. So hopefully this will also help with some well-being tools you can apply to your busy schedules. We also have our next set of panels starting in around 25 minutes. That's at 15:30 UK time. We have two specialist panels lined up. So the first is on climate litigation, a rule of law approach to climate justice. So looking at ways that legal mechanisms can address the climate crisis. And then our second panel is global health and pro bono and the universal right to health in COVID-19. We've got some really interesting specialists talking about obviously what the right to health and particularly sort of laws around that and the vaccines, and what the progress and the justice issues are around those. So thank you very much again for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at the next sessions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you too. Bye.